It is now January and the cold weather has set in the northern hemisphere. In fact, 3 out of the 4 stories on the boating news this week all feature cold weather. Welcome back, guys, to this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you watched the videos last week, you guys saw we did a couple giveaways. I gotta congratulate McCune49 and From the Other Side of the Fence, who are the 2 winners from last week. We will continue the giveaways. I'll do another one on this Sunday's coming video. We still do have a few Drain Plug Mafia tumblers left for sale over on the Facebook shop. I'll leave a link in the description below, but we're gonna keep these giveaways coming. Plan on doing them every week the rest of the year. Let's get this episode of Boating News of the Week started. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us up to Maryland, where these wild images were caught this past week when a Piper Cherokee took off from Lee Airport and had to make an emergency landing on a frozen lake. Fortunately, the pilot was able to successfully land on the lake without injury, but rescuers had to find a way to get out to him. One of the first responders on the scene was Anne Arundel County Police Officer Elizabeth Myers. As seen in the footage here, she grabbed a kayak to try and cross the river to get out to the plane to pull the pilot off the wing and bring him safely back to shore. But obviously on a frozen waterway, paddles aren't going to work so well. So she comes up with the brilliant idea and grabs 2 screwdrivers and uses those to paddle her way out toward the plane. Now, as she arrives toward the airplane, 2 other Good Samaritan kayakers have also arrived on the scene, and the pilot is standing on the wings without any major injury. Local Department of Natural Resource officers are eventually able to get a boat out to the scene and get the pilot brought back to shore safely. Currently, CETO and several other organizations are working on a plan to try and remove the plane from the frozen lake. But I gotta commend everybody on this one. Everybody took the proper actions. Great job by the pilot to pick a nice, safe location to attempt to land the plane, and great job by the Good Samaritans who jumped into the water to try and get out to him quickly, as well as this officer. Everybody jumped in using the tools they had to get out there and make a successful rescue. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to stick along this icy path, but it's going to move us over to the Great Lakes, where unusually early icy conditions on the lakes have been wreaking havoc in shipping lanes, as U.S. Coast Guard and Canadian Coast Guard officials have already estimated they have rescued over 30 boats that have been stuck in the ice in the region. Strong winter storms that made their way through this area over the past 2 weeks have created some of the worst snow and coldest temperatures they've seen in late December, early January in many years. In fact, the Canadian Coast Guard's ice-breaking superintendent told news media outlets this past week that recent storms led to the quick formation of ice on the western basin of Lake Erie and certain parts of the Detroit River. It had an effect they hadn't seen before at this time of year. The combined cold weather and snow just created an ice formation that spread very quickly, with ice thickness measured up to 2 feet in depth. Due to the amount of vessels getting stuck in the ice over the past few weeks, the Coast Guard has already announced they've begun their annual ice-breaking mission. Typically, they don't start these missions till the middle or end of January, but due to the significant cold weather and vessels being stuck, they actually had to begin back in December, several weeks earlier than normal. Typically, the Coast Guard will keep these missions going through mid-March to early April, doing everything it can to keep the shipping lanes open for commerce during the colder weather. Our next story to make the boating news will finally take us to a little warmer weather as we move down to the Bahamas, where this past week this was the scene when the general cargo ship Onigo Traveler sank off the coast of Abaco near Hole-in-the-Wall Lighthouse in the Bahamas. Reportedly on December 29th, but it is estimated that the vessel started sinking much earlier, as it reported possibly hitting a reef back on December 25th, causing a possible breach in the hull, allowing the vessel to take on water. Once the crew realized the vessel was going down, they did try to run the vessel aground, but unfortunately attempted to do so too late, and the vessel wound up sinking before they could get it beached. There were 12 crew members on board the vessel at the time of the sinking. Fortunately, all 12 were able to be rescued without any injury. The vessel was en route from Finland to New Orleans, carrying a load of steel. Salvage operations are currently underway trying to determine the best course of action with the vessel. Our next story to make the boating news is going to take us back to the cold weather as we move up to Canada and British Columbia, while salvage crews still deal with damage from winter storms that went through this past week.
Here we are, still cleaning up after that snowstorm. The next project. Here we are, partway through the day. She's cut out so far. And here's the final product. The boat's cut out.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit me up on Facebook or Instagram and let me know, and you might see your stories over here. Just like Great South Bay Images, Adam Coolidge, Coldwater Marine, and Michael Bush did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here.